The situation over at Ubisoft is proof that voting with our wallets works. But it's not just that. It's also proof that treating your customers right is the strategy that companies fall back on when they are desperate for money. And while the big headlines are around the collapse of Ubisoft, and I guess rightfully so, when we read between the lines, we can understand a lot of how the industry works, about how they have been mistreating customers for so long, and it exposes a lot of the business tactics and what these companies internally know about how they should operate, but they try and get away with the worst practices possible, believing that they're too big to fail and that they can make more money. I'm not exaggerating when I say that this is a huge turning point for the industry and the way that we can use the information gained here for our benefit. Just to cover a bit of the context very quickly, Ubisoft's stock has plummeted to an over 10-year low at this point. It dipped into around 9.38 euro at one point, which is less than half of what it was worth 6 months ago, which already was 33% less than what it was worth a year ago, which was half of what it was worth 5 years ago. But what's very important about Ubisoft's situation is that in that undeniable collapse that they've been going through, a lot of moving pieces have been in play. They have been a target for a hostile takeover for over 10 years, and that threat has not disappeared, with a hostile takeover basically being people buying enough shares in the company to be considered owners and kicking management out and just taking control over it. They've also been under threat using European law of takeovers of the company without that majority by people alleging that the management at the company is running the company into the ground. Now, don't think that these attempts of taking over Ubisoft are from nice people who want them to make good games. These are from arguably even worse people who want to squeeze this company for more or even potentially strip it for parts. And so they've been in a desperate fight to make more and more money, but they have been failing at it, mostly because they have continued to implement terrible practices when it comes to customers, and their game design has failed to evolve in any meaningful way. They are basically just making games as vehicles to make money because that's the only thing that they can be concerned about. And within this very bad situation for them, where they are desperate for money, in that desperation, what they have chosen is to show their cards. And in doing that, they're returning a lot of power back to customers and exposing the very ugly side of the industry. Now, before we keep going, hi, I'm Mug. If you're new here, welcome. And if you're not new here, welcome back. Thank you so much. If at any point in the video you think this information is worth sharing, give this video a like. That helps it reach more people and it helps the channel grow, just as much as subscribing if you want more of what I do. So, why is Ubisoft's collapse so good for games? The very interesting thing about what Ubisoft has decided to do when they're pushed up against a wall is that they've made decisions that on paper, you look at them and you just think, wait, aren't these all just good things for gamers? And they are. But the thing is, they're doing this when they're desperate for more money. Are you connecting the pieces here? I recently made a video titled, "Why Bad Games Failing Means Gaming is Healing." Because that is 100% true. I stand by everything I said in that video. Every time that a massive super investment fails, we see the industry learn and better understand not what we want, but that we, the customers, are in control. The secret, though, the quiet part out loud, is that a lot of these companies already know that, and the practices that they've been implementing for the last 10 to 12 years have all been done knowing that we hate them, but exploiting the customer, saying, hey, we know you can't get this experience anywhere else, and so we can nickel and dime you, we can torture you, we can implement all of these different monetization tactics, and you will bend to our will, and at the end we're going to make money. But not anymore. What this collapse of Ubisoft proves is that as gamers demand better, we get better. Because let's re-examine some of the changes that Ubisoft is implementing for the launch of AC Shadows. Firstly, they're releasing day one on Steam, and this one isn't that great because they are still going to require the Uplay launcher. But it proves that having their games on day one on another storefront is something that they believe or have the statistics to back up would be good for business. Which also means that they have been choosing to take a loss on the PC market by locking their games to Uplay believing in some capacity that it would have some sort of long-term benefit for the company, which is most definitely not the case. So I guess customers were right all along. Please stop forcing us to use this launcher. Let us buy your games where we want to buy them. The next one is that they will no longer be offering early access to the game depending on how much you pay for it, which is still one of the worst practices that I see gaining traction within games. I have said that over and over again, and whenever a video game does this, what they're actually doing is saying, hey, the real release date is for people who are willing to pay more, and the rest of you can pay it on the fake late release day because you didn't want to give us more money. It's a horrible tactic under which companies can make a ton of money by manipulating you with FOMO and convenience. But the part that's really twisted is what we lose in the process. By creating something as simple as, well, the game is ready, so if you pay us 20 more bucks, you can play it a week early, suddenly all of the value of the deluxe editions is put into that early access system. When before, to justify editions that were $20 or $30 more expensive, or in the case of Ubisoft, $50 more expensive for Ultimate Editions, they actually had to put in more work and include other content or include at a cheaper price what would later be a season pass. Which, hey, pre-ordering games is always dangerous and I don't recommend that you do it. But there was something much better about a game costing $60 or the $90 edition coming with the season pass that you could otherwise buy for $40. It was like telling us, hey, we promise you there's going to be $40 worth of extra stuff we're going to put out later. But if you trust us, in exchange for that trust, we'll give you a $10 discount for giving us that money up front. Now they will just tell you, hey, give us $30 more to play the same exact game as everybody else, but you get a nice skin and you play it 5 days early. And I have long believed that this practice is very destructive and has led to some very bad press and very bad perception of companies. And it's overall harmful for the industry. We should all get to play the game at the same time. And you know who else agrees? The market, because Ubisoft taking away that early access strategy indicates that they are aware of the impact that it has, and they also believe that it's harmful. And they stand to sell more copies and make more money by simply selling the game at the same time to everybody, no matter how much you're willing to pay for the deluxe edition. But it's not just the early access, it's the entire season pass system. Because they're stripping away the tiered pricing that they had by trying to sell you a season pass ahead of time, and instead now everybody who pre-orders gets the first expansion for free. Which seems like they're being nice, guys, but let's be honest, that first expansion is probably content that wasn't ready for the launch of the game, that should have been there day one, and they just stripped it out and are putting it in here for free. But at least it looks like they're doing you a solid. The more important part is taking away that season pass system, which in a recent video about how people like to call good games anomalies now, I mentioned that isn't it impressive that other companies like FromSoft with their Elden Ring DLC don't have to sell you a season pass up front to upsell you on deluxe editions with that promise, and instead they just give you a good game, and when they have DLC to sell you, they just sell it to you. They tell you, hey, this is the price for it, please pay it, and here's the game. And how I don't think it's a coincidence that people have reacted very positively towards that, compared to the feeling of getting nickel and dimed and upsold constantly on season passes and all these deluxe editions of games. And Ubisoft agrees. Ubisoft believes, with all of the internal data that they have, with all of the market knowledge that they have of running a business with over 20,000 employees, that it is actually better for business to not have that upselling, to not be pushing you a season pass, and to change the entire model. And of course, the reason for their delay, their very candid admittance that Star Wars Outlaws was unpolished, that it shouldn't have released in that state, and their reason, we'll get into what the real reasons might be later, but their reason for delaying Assassin's Creed Shadows is that lack of polish. The fact that it was going to release in a state that wouldn't have been worthwhile, that would have been harshly critiqued by people, that we would have seen dozens of videos of the game being buggy and looking bad and just not working the way it's intended. They are saying, we knew, and we made this last-minute decision because originally our plan, similar to Outlaws, was to release a broken game, to release a game that wasn't ready for market, but we would fix it down the line anyways, you know, patches, guys. it's okay, we need the money now. Because the way that this operates in a publicly traded company like Ubisoft is we need to hit our milestones for our fiscal year. We need to hit the investor thresholds, and that means we need to release at a specific date with a specific marketing push and sell this much. When what they are seeing is their sales go down and they are analyzing the reasons for it, they are now finally remembering that if you launch a game that is really good, that is polished, that isn't filled with bugs and feels unfinished, it's going to sell more, which in the end would lead to a better result for the company. And this is not me speculating about all of this anymore. This is me showing you that Ubisoft agrees, because otherwise there's no reason for them to make these decisions. The most important thing for this company is to make money. That is what they care about the most. That is everything to them. So you have to remember that every decision that they're making here is not because they want to be the good guys. It's because they want you to buy their games, and they are willing to make any changes necessary in order to make that happen. And it just so happens, look at that actually implementing good business practices that are healthy towards customers to make better decisions that favor us is what they believe is going to lead to better sales, to people being happier with what they are doing and giving them money. The problem is that none of these things address the biggest issue, which is that the game doesn't look that great. I've said this before and have had people push back on this, saying that I'm just speculating, but it really doesn't take a genius to look at the gameplay of Assassin's Creed Shadows so far and say that there's nothing special going on here. Particularly if you've been playing Ubisoft games for a good long while, you see everything that you've seen before, just with a different skin. And it does not look to be addressing any of the criticisms that people have had over the last 10 years of Ubisoft's game design. And while we haven't played the game, I think that if they were addressing those things, they would have made a bigger fuss about it, because it's not like it's a tiny corner of the internet. The most important reason I think that gameplay-wise it isn't going to deviate from the norm is that the last time that we complained about how Ubisoft makes their games was before Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and there they directly addressed it. They told us this game would have less bloat, that they were concerning themselves more with quality over quantity, just to release Valhalla and have it be the complete opposite, a game that had more bloat than ever. And you know what the result was for Ubisoft? The best-selling Assassin's Creed game of all time. So why would they change that now? Well, I actually think that they would, if they could. It's a little bit too late in development for them to change significant parts of Shadows, although there are rumors of a potential further delay and a further reworking of the game at a deeper level, which I really think at this point would probably just kill off Ubisoft. It wouldn't survive another delay, but those rumors exist for a reason. And now you might be confused, but wait. If giving people what they want sells more, they gave people what they didn't want and they sold a shit ton. Yeah, sure, but that's where just saying things like it's the best-selling Assassin's Creed game don't paint a very complete picture. As far as we know today, it is the best-selling Assassin's Creed game within that time period, within the 4 years that it's been for sale. It's also the one that's made the most money because it's also the one that most aggressively pushes its microtransactions. But the thing you have to realize is that it's still not close to the glory days of Ubisoft, which are around the PS2 and the PS3 360 era. Its sales numbers are very close to things like Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time. It's very close to Assassin's Creed 2. It's basically neck and neck with Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. Origins was a huge dipping point for the series, Odyssey brought it back up, and then Valhalla rode the wave of Viking popularity and had a ton of sales over time as well. It's important to remember that, which means that it did sell at lower discounted prices and including DLC that also cost a lot of money to produce. And despite all of that, if you just say Assassin's Creed Valhalla is the best-selling one, it makes it sound like the Assassin's Creed franchise is growing and growing and growing when it's not. It's just reaching a former glory. They aren't really expanding the amount of people that play. They're not capturing every single person who played the old ones plus an entire new generation. And they're doing this all the while inflation keeps affecting how much all of that money really matters, and while being a much bigger company that costs a lot more money to run. And this is why they so aggressively monetize everything, because instead of actually making good games and expanding the audience and having it reach newer people, what they're trying to do is to sell enough of the game to keep whaling people, to keep capturing people that will spend all of their money, that will end up spending $200, $300 on these games with microtransactions. And you know what? It doesn't seem to be working, because if it were working, they would just keep following that plan with Assassin's Creed Shadows. Like, the truth of what I'm talking about here is that Ubisoft probably knows more about this than us, at least me, okay? They know with 100% certainty how their sales are going, what the metrics are, the retention for players, the average play times. They know what people want to spend money on. They know the points of frustration in their games. They know all of that better than us. And by making these decisions, they're letting us know what they know. And it turns out that we were right. And so now, Ubisoft has to listen to their customers. But the interesting part about that is that they would never make decisions that would actively harm the company, especially not in the position that they're in right now. So what they're telling us is that the best decisions for the company are to treat customers better, to backpedal on some of the worst practices that we've seen gain popularity over the last 10 years, in many cases made popular by them. And this sends a huge signal to the rest of the industry and a huge message to us. The message it's sending to the industry is, don't forget that the customer is the most important thing. That is the only thing that's going to keep your company afloat. But the message it's sending to us is that we are right. We are powerful. We can force change for the better just by voting with our wallets and making noise. And the other very important message it gives us is that all of these companies that are implementing these tactics, that are ignoring what we have to say, they know what the right strategy is. They know what would be the best decisions, and the reasons they don't make them, the reasons they don't do what Ubisoft is doing right now of changing everything, is because they still think they can get away with it. While Ubisoft believed for such a long time that they were too big to fail, and now they're collapsing, other companies still believe they're too big to fail. They still believe that they can push their weight around and force us into playing their games in these terrible circumstances. And look, most companies don't do what Ubisoft does. The problem with Ubisoft is really that they do every single bad thing all at once. They combine everything we dislike. Bloated games that fail to innovate with tons of season passes, microtransaction cash shops, single-player battle passes, early access for those who pay, basically all of it at once, where other games try and strike a balance. Look, Space Marine 2 wanted to make as much money as possible, and they knew that early access was going to give them a lot of money, so they implemented it. But they're not implementing pay to win or paid for content later down the line. They're making more money through purely cosmetic microtransactions. Okay, they're trying to strike a balance, right? And the most important part about Space Marine 2 is that it's a great game that offers great value to anybody who's interested in it and follows that design philosophy of Halo many years ago, of campaign, PvE, PvP. And I think it's pretty clear people are willing to put up with some of these practices as long as the quality of the game is good and it gives them something that they want. But Ubisoft aren't the only ones trying to do everything bad all at once. And the failure of Ubisoft is definitely going to give pause to any other major publisher that was considering dialing up those practices a bit more, squeezing the customer just a tiny bit more. And it also gives us, the customers, the information we need that even if it's just one bad practice or a company threatening to implement another extra one, we can just say no. And they have to bend to our will eventually. Ubisoft's collapse here is incredibly important to all of video games, to the market. It really exposes how some of these things work and the truth that when they are desperate, when they most need money, what they have to do is treat us right. And it's not just a form of apology. It's not just begging and groveling. It is them accepting with knowledge, because they wouldn't make these decisions otherwise given where they are, that making better pro-consumer choices is going to lead to better sales. Will that pan out in this situation? I don't know. I really don't think so. Assassin's Creed Shadows has plenty of other problems, and the most important one of it being a good video game is very much in doubt, at least I place it as such. And of course, not to mention a host of other issues. And yes, I am working on a very in-depth video analyzing the situation with Yasuke, because I've found some stuff that is very much worth talking about. And if you want to hear me expose just how cowardly Ubisoft was when deciding on Yasuke as a protagonist, remember to subscribe. It's a really big video, okay? But it should be out soon. I have to do things right, or the best I can at least. But this is a moment of celebration for us as gamers, as customers. This could actually be a huge turning point for the entire industry. And it has given us, the customers, so many weapons to fight this that we didn't have before. And I have to keep saying it. Video games are doing great. We've got amazing games all the time. The indie scene is absolutely bursting with amazing games day after day. And AA and smaller niches within gaming are thriving right now. But I still want the huge AAA studios to change, because those are the ones with the most resources that can attract the most talent and that can pull off the most ambitious projects. And instead of trying to do things that push the medium forward, they're just trying to make as much money as possible. And things like this can lead us back on a road where what we should expect from AAA is quality, instead of just enough quality to make money off of us. So we'll see how things pan out, and I'll have to stay on this because I'll have to remind people, especially at the launch of Assassin's Creed Shadows, if it does poorly, which, let's be honest, it's looking like it's gonna be that it didn't fail because it switched into doing pro-consumer practices. Quite the contrary, it will only do as well as it does then because of that switch. And if it hadn't done them, it would have done worse. I will not allow the industry to gaslight us and tell us that the reason that Assassin's Creed Shadows fails economically in sales is because it made good decisions for the customer. I will not allow that, because let's not play dumb, let's not twist things in the future. Ubisoft knows exactly what they're doing here, and we should not forget that. I've been Mug. Thank you so much for watching. The channel has been doing incredibly well this month, and I doubt I can keep that momentum up, but it's been a pleasure to have so many people join and find that the things I do and say here are valuable. I take your support seriously as a responsibility of putting out great videos at the quality standard that I think you expect from me. And I hope I'm doing a good job. So if you want more from me, subscribe. And yes, I will be cutting my hair at 50,000 subscribers. It's a long story. I still think it's a ways away though. But if you wanted to make it sooner, you know how to. A very extra special thanks to my patrons up on the $1 wall. It's called that way because there's only one tier, $1. But they support everything I do, and if you would like to support it as well, the link is in the description below. And as always, thank you for watching. Go play a good video game today. Have some fun, and I'll see you again very soon.